What is up, guys? Welcome back to another video. My name is Nash, and in this video I'm going to be breaking down how business consulting engagements work. Now, this is the same thing as projects. Consultants refer to projects as engagements. Now, if you've never watched my videos before, my name is Nash and I work in business consulting, specifically risk management consulting, for one of the big four consulting firms. Now, first things first, you have to get picked, right? If you're new, they're just going to throw you into the first project that is related to what you do. So if you're in risk management, if there's a project that's been happening for the past 6 months and it doesn't end until maybe 5 months into the future, they might just make you join the team, or maybe it's a brand new project, so you get to start from scratch. But it's easy to get picked for a project if you're new. So sometimes if you've already worked on the project and maybe you didn't, do well on the project, it might be a little hard to get, to get picked for a project. It might be on the bench for a little while, but eventually you get a project. After you get picked, the client is going to have their own requirements from you, right? This is the onboarding process for the client, because as a consultant, the client is going to hire you as a contractor, right? And they have different requirements that they need from you. And different clients have different requirements. On my first engagement, the client only needed my address and phone number. That's it. Some clients don't really need that much information. Depending on the information that the clients wants from you in order to onboard you onto the project, this might take maybe a week, it might take 2 weeks. It could take really maybe 2 days, one day, but sometimes I would give it maybe 3 days to 1 week in order for that process to be over. So, and it also depends on the information that they're requesting from you. Now, let's say you finish the onboarding process. The next thing is going to be, getting together with the entire team, right? So teams can be, maybe 20 people, 100, 200, 300 people. That is the entire team of consultants. And this includes partners, managers, and seniors and things like that. It's everyone. So you have an overview meeting. So this is a meeting where you kind of like get an overview of the project. So essentially it usually starts with you understanding the client, right? Maybe it's a bank. So they will talk about, information about the bank, kind of like the history of the bank and how they do their business. And they move on to specific things about the project, right? Kind of like an overview, so you have kind of like a bigger picture of the entire project before you go into your specific task. Now, this usually takes a day or so because it's usually a presentation that you just have to watch. Someone is presenting, and if you have any questions, they answer the questions. Pretty simple. This doesn't take long. And then after that, this is going to be probably the longest thing that's going to happen. This is going to be systems access. Now, if you're working remote, right, some clients will let you remote log into their systems, right, using maybe AWS or other systems that allow you to remote log into clients. They'll let you do that, but some clients want you to be on the client side. So for the most part, since we had COVID, a lot of clients were doing, remote access. So when you do that, even if you're on the client side, you still need, you still need systems access. You need to be able to log into the client system, right? So you need a login for that. Now, after that, there's different applications that you might be using in order to do your, your job. Or maybe sometimes a lot of clients, especially if you work in risk management, a lot of clients have different applications that they use to manage risk, so you need logins to all of those applications. Whether it's only 10 or 20, you need logins, and that usually takes a lot of time because there's a lot of problems that come with that, and you have to call their IT department, and you have all the consultants calling the IT department, and you're waiting. This usually takes a long time, maybe 2 weeks or so. In the past, when I had an engagement where we had, I think it was like 15 different logins and they were not working, we had to, keep trying, and we get locked out of the systems, and then the IT guys from the client side set up a meeting, and then a lot of people had a lot of questions, and then they had, it's just a lot of things that go on when it comes to systems access, especially if there's a lot of consultants. That is gonna take a while. And at the same time, you can't really do your job if you do not have access to these systems, right? Because they're required for you to do your job. So you're not really pushing anything into production. All right, so let's say that everyone has access now. The next step is going to be breaking down the different consultants into different teams, right? It's kind of like an assembly line where, they've already aligned the processes, right? Like this, and that. So they break down the consultants into small teams, maybe teams of 5, teams of 7, teams of 10. And it's always going to be a different team for different engagements. And sometimes you might get moved from this team to that team. And at the top, you have a quality control team that checks the work, right? Once it goes to quality control, they review it. and if it doesn't look good, they send it back, and then you have to redo it. It's just a whole, like an assembly line, right? And there's a quality control at the top that reviews it before it goes to the client. So in risk management, most clients have an idea of, the risk that they have, depending on the business model. They know this is our risk and this is what you should be looking for when you're working, on this project. Now, as you work on the project, it's possible to discover things that the client did not know, right? Now, once you do that, if that happens, they have to take that problem to the client and present it, and the client gives guidance, right? And most of the time, the guidance that the client gives or instructions might contradict what you were doing. So you have to redo all the work that you've already completed in order to meet that new guidance or new instructions. A good example is I was working on a project with a big bank, and they were trying to define what a suspect is. As we worked on the project, we were able to identify the suspects using the information that the client gave us, right? And later on, we ended up not having suspects, right? So we had to go to the client saying, could the business be a suspect? And they're like, oh yeah, the business can be a suspect. So we had to go back to all the cases that we worked and try to make sure that all the businesses that we went through weren't actually suspects, right? So you have to redo all of that. So that's kind of like what comes with risk management, is discovering new risk and getting new guidance from the client and fixing the work that you already did. So risk management engagements can take a really long time. And also another thing that they usually do before the project starts is you putting in your vacation time. So you have to put in your vacation time before the project starts or at the beginning of the project. So you kind of like have to know, if the project is for 7 months, you can say 3 months from now, I want to take a week off, right? So you have to do that before. And this allows, the firm or the consulting firm to calculate their revenue, right? Because as a consultant, they bill the client for every hour that you work. So they're able to kind of like project their revenue correctly, knowing that you're not going to work for a week. They can, have an accurate projection. So that's why you see that before you get into an engagement, they usually ask, you can't really randomly take days off unless you're sick. You kind of like have to plan it ahead. For the duration of the project, at least you have to plan ahead if you want to take a day off or a week off or a couple of days off. All right, so let's say that the project is finally over. So you start rolling off the project. It's pretty easy. There's not really a lot of things. Now, once you get off the project, you get on the bench, right? So the bench is the time that you wait in between rolling off a project and starting a new one, right? So the bench can be for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 5 months, a year. You could be on the bench for that long. I don't know about a year, but maybe a couple months you could be on the bench, right? That's because maybe they are working on, starting a new project, and the process of just getting the client is longer, so you be on the bench, so you're not really doing anything. So when you're on the bench, you do internal stuff, right? Maybe you're updating your resume, maybe you are actually volunteering, or maybe you are, participating more in community events or social events, right? Because if you're in a project, sometimes, it might be 10 hours needed from you every single day, to dedicate towards the client. So you don't really have time to do, some of the fun stuff that the firm does, whether it's social events or volunteering or things like that. So you don't really have, you just working and working and working and working. But once you're on the bench, you have the ability to do that. You can volunteer, you can do so many things, you can get more involved. And what I like to do is to actually network. That's the time you have to reach out to people, maybe, some seniors or maybe managers. You can reach out to them. That's it's a great time to do that. So being on the bench is not a bad thing unless you performed really, really bad on the project, right? So they might keep you on the bench for a while because, your project performance is what they kind of like look at, how you performed and the things that you're strong at doing, and then they align you with a new project. So if you performed really bad, you might be on the bench for a little while. But at the same time, you can always reach out to your talent consultant or maybe counselor, and they can help you kind of like get on a new project. But being on the bench is really fun. It's kind of like being on a mini vacation where you're still kind of like working, but not really working. Like I said before, risk management engagements usually take a long time. Now, any engagement can get extended, right? Let's say you're supposed to finish in 4 months, and then the client, finds more things for the firm to do, and they rework the scope of work, and then, it's more money for the firm. So there's always going to be a chance that your project gets extended. All right, so that is pretty much it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Make sure to go and hit the subscribe button below if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.